What I settled into, what the Lord led me to, was about hunger, good hunger and bad hunger. But let's pray before I start. I need it. Dear Lord and Father, I ask you to be with us here this morning, to guide everything I do here. Give me the words to get your message across, Lord, to teach what you want to be taught. And just, I pray, Lord, that you can use me to do your will. And just guide us through this service. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to start at Matthew chapter 5 and verse 6. I brought this big Bible, the print's a little bigger. A big study Bible that I looked everything in. It's, like I say, the print's a little easier for me to see up here. Matthew chapter 5 verse 6. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. I feel like we're supposed to be hungry for the Lord and for the things of the Lord. That and some of my stuff I was looking at it, you know, if you think you've got enough, you probably ain't got much at all. So we should always, don't know exactly how to say it, but always should be full, but always want more. It's kind of I call it a delicate balance. You know, be on the verge of busting, but you can still hold more, and he still gives you more. But and I thank him for that every day. But I know I always heard, don't go to the grocery store hungry. You end up with a cart full of junk, and it works for me. Which anytime I go to the grocery store, I end up with a cart full of junk because that's usually what I'm looking for. But and then I think about when I go out to eat. I like to go out for a steak. I want a good steak when I go out to eat. So I get aggravated at the Roadhouse. You go in there and you sit down, they bring you that big bowl of rolls. I don't like bread, but I love them rolls. And I'll sit there and eat 2 or 3 of those. Then I have to have me an order of tater skins. I'll eat them, my steak comes out, and I'm not hungry enough to eat the darn thing. And I get this, why they do me that way? But it's what I say, if you fill up on the things you're not really wanting or needing, and you don't have room. And it's like if we fill up with the things of the world, we don't have room for the things of the Lord. And I don't want to be that way, but I am a lot of times. And but I just wanted to talk about, like I say, I don't know how well I got through studying here, but the different things about people being hungry in the Bible. Start out and go to Luke 15. We'll go to the prodigal son there. We all know that story. The son decided he wanted to take his portion of his inheritance and just go on and live his own life. So the father gave it to him. And he went and wasted it all, and then he ended up having to take a job feeding pigs. And I'm sure as a Jewish man, young Jewish man, that was not, I'm thinking he was probably ashamed to have that job. But then he got so bad that he wanted to eat the pig slop, as I call it. Let's see. Luke 15:15. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. When he came to himself, He said, "How many hired servants of my father have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee." Let's see. "And am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants." I feel like I done that. As I was growing up, I came to the Lord pretty young, about 12 years old. And I stuck with the program, as they say, for a while, but I drifted away through high school. I kind of let it go that, I kind of didn't need to show everybody I was a Christian. I know I am. I don't have to act like that. I don't have to do that. But, and I went on that way for years. I knew I wasn't right, but I couldn't get myself back. And after me and Cindy got married, and we had Chris, and he started growing up, and we realized that we needed to be back in church. We needed to get in church. And I got back to church, and I'm telling you, just like boom, there was God right there with me. I felt like I'd went a million miles away, but He was right there to give me the nourishment I'd lacked all those 15 years or so. But that's, this guy was at the point of eating pig slop to survive. And all he had to do was go back and ask the Father. And in verse 23 of Luke 15, "And bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry." All he had to do was turn and ask the Father, and he got the good food. That's Jesus' parable, but it's just like us with our spiritual food. We need it. We need the good stuff. And let's see. Now we go back to Genesis. We'll look at Esau a minute. In Genesis 25. It's another reason I brought this Bible. I don't have anything marked in it. It don't have the little things. Make me learn how to find the books a little quicker, I think. Genesis 25, starting in verse 29. "And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright." At that time, the birthright was a great thing, and Esau was expecting it, which, as I've read on, it's not necessarily the firstborn that gets the birthright. The father has to give it to them, but generally it went to the firstborn. I feel like Esau was expecting it, but he stayed out so long, he got so hungry that he'd do anything for something to eat, just a bowl of soup, And what I found was the birthright entitled them to a double portion of the inheritance from the father and spiritual leadership of the family when the father was gone. But it didn't mean enough to him it didn't mean as much to him as a bowl of soup at that time. And it's, I feel like we also do that with our spiritual life. Well, I do. With my spiritual life, sometimes I did for those 15 years or so, it's just, it wasn't that important to me. And I'm almost ashamed to say that, but I know I should have been a lot better, but I was getting that field in the wrong way, and that's what Esau was doing. As I was reading it's got a little commentary in it. It said, how hard or how long would it have took Esau to fix himself something to eat? That he couldn't have lasted 3 more minutes to pull a tomato off a vine or something, just to have something to eat to get him by, other than selling that birthright. But he just, I feel like he got too hungry. And that's one thing I've always thought about with my spiritual life since I got back to church is when you go so long of being hungry, you'll take anything. And as we've been talking about on Wednesday nights, the false teachers are everywhere. And if you let your spiritual fullness get so low, you'll accept anything somebody says and says it's in the name of the Lord. That I feel like that makes it a lot easier for a false prophet, false teacher to get something started in you that you'll eat. As you say, you get looking in the refrigerator and you've got good food, but you're so hungry you just start eating potato chips and cold hot dogs or something, just something to eat, and it looks like it would be nourishing. And as Ron always says, the false religions always have that little bit of truth, and just enough to make you think it's good, and it'll get you to where you won't believe the true stuff, or you don't have time to fool with it, or you don't have room to put it in. I don't want to be that way anymore, but I still like my tater chips and cold hot dogs. So, but I don't think I would give all of my inheritance for a bowl of soup. But I remember an old movie, Paul Newman, I think, in Hombre, old Western movie, and he's on a stagecoach with a bunch of people, and they started talking about the Indian people, and the folks in the stagecoach didn't know he was raised by the Indians, and they got talking about the Indians eating dogs and things, and he looks over at the woman. He said, "Lady, have you ever been hungry?" She said, "Yes." And he said, "I don't mean late for supper." He said, "I mean hungry." So, if you get that hungry, if somebody puts something in front of you, you'll eat it. And I don't want to get that hungry. I want to keep enough going. Like, I don't know, a lot of people will go, seems like they'll go to church on Sunday morning and get a good blessing, get a good feel of the Word, and go home and not think about it until next Sunday morning. And I can't do that. I've got to have some in between. If I went a week with no more Word, it's hard to tell what I'd swallow up, just to try to fill that hole. And that's what I like about coming over here, is to get the true Word every time I'm here. And I hope and pray that I'm delivering a true Word here this morning in this little, makeshift, manually researched lesson I'm trying to get worked out here. But anyway, hunger is everywhere. I looked this up. Let's see. 1 Corinthians 13:8. 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 1 Corinthians in 2023 was the latest estimate I could get. In America, 47.4 million people lived in food insecure households. That they didn't have enough food for everybody in the family, or some of them, none of them had enough food. But they struggled to feed everybody in their house. 47.4 million people. I kind of wonder how many people in America struggle for spiritual hunger. I don't know. I couldn't find anything to say anything about that. But I would imagine it's at least that or more, that people that just don't get the right nourishment for their spiritual needs. Now, we'll go over to Exodus now. Speaking of hunger everywhere, go to chapter 16 and verse 3. We'll start there. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the field. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Poor old Israelites, they murmured and complained about every little thing. But let's see. I think they'd traveled for a month and hadn't found anything to eat, I believe. Do you remember that one, Ron?
They had
food that they'd brought with them. Right, yeah, but it had ran out. I would imagine they might have been able to stretch it a couple weeks maybe, but that's probably about it. So I would imagine they were getting hungry. I get a little aggravated when I can't eat lunch at 12 o'clock, so every day. So, except Sunday, I'm used to waiting until about 1:30 before I can have lunch on Sunday. But we kind of pick on the Israelites for their murmuring all the time. But I kind of get that one a little bit. But they were at the point of, if we were going to come out here and starve to death, why don't we just die in Egypt? There wasn't no, what's the whole point, And, but then again, in verse 4, Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. The Lord made a way. I don't think He really liked their complaining. It showed a sign of that they didn't think He was going to take care of them. But He just, and I'm that way. I get, I know the Lord's going to take care of me, but I get to wondering how's He going to do this? How's He going to do that? What do I need to do for this? And I've said it myself several times. I just let go and let God, and it works. But I want to get myself in there to work it up and do something, and I screw it up every time. But the Lord will take care of those physical hunger needs too. But it's hunger everywhere. But that's, to me, those are bad hungers. But the Lord shows you how it works out, how He's got it planned. But you can't. Like I said, I try not to let myself get that hungry, for food. So why not let myself get that hungry for spiritual food? And like I say, if you feel starved, you'll eat anything that goes in front of you. or you'll, like Esau did, you'll pay way too high a price for something to hold you over. But then we go to Psalms 42. That one is a little hard for me to find in this book. This is the hunger I think we're supposed to have. Psalm 42, verse 1. As the hart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? I think that is what the Lord wants us to have. The good hunger. The hunger for Him, for His Word, for His truth, for His sustaining power for us. But I learned something this morning. I've always heard that verse from different TV preachers, radio preachers, and different little sayings you see wrote around, It says, the deer panteth. Now, my Bible says heart. What is, and I've laid it off to, well, that's a NIV version or something, that's, they're reading a different version of the Bible. And finally it dawned on me this morning to look that up, and I noticed that that's not the heart like we got in our chest. And I looked it up, and that is Hebrew, that heart for a stag or a male deer. And I said, well, maybe they wasn't wrong. But that has bothered me for years. And I never had sense enough to look that up till this morning. And I don't know, but I liked it with the deer in there because I could reference that. I could see a deer in there, I can't see my heart panting. But then it finally dawned on me, that's not the heart like I've got. But I thank Him for that little lesson this morning too, because I was trying to listen to a message from Charles Stanley on hunger for the Lord, and he read it that way. And I said, shoot, I got to look that up. That ain't right, But then my internet wasn't good enough. It in and out. So, but anyway, I really like that, and I think that is more what the Lord wants us to have, is a hunger and a thirst for Him. As back over in Matthew, and with the feeding the 5,000. Chapter 14 and verse 21 is where that's at. Well, it starts in verse 15. And when it was evening, His disciples came to Him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, give ye them to eat. And they say unto Him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And He commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass. And He took 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, He blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to His disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So they were hungry. Jesus fed them. But they were there for the Word. And they were so involved with His teaching that they wouldn't go get something to eat. They were staying there. It's kind of like they're hanging on every word. You can't break yourself away to go find a concession stand or a food truck. You got to, if I leave, I'll miss something. So that's the way I pictured in my head, that they're all there listening to him, and they're getting spiritually fed, and it's holding them over, but the disciples are afraid to let them leave, afraid they'll, something happen to them before they get something to eat. But that 5 loaves and 2 fish. And I'm imagining that those are probably like 2 fish that I would catch. I mean, itty bitties. They don't. I've heard it said, a bag of crackers and a box of sardines, is what he fed 5,000 people with. And that's the Lord. He's the only one that can feed people that way. And let's see, I've got one more spot over in John chapter 4. Too many pages. Verse 15. Yeah, let's go up to 13. But this story of the woman at the well, and she came to the well to get water and met Jesus there. And in verse 13, Jesus answered and said unto her, let me start over there. Verse 13, Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. And the woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. She came to the well thirsty for water. And she was going to take just a plain old well water. But when she talked to Jesus, I feel like she got thirsty for spiritual water. And she got the good thirst. She came with which I know they drew water for the family, for everybody in the house, but she was just wanting, she didn't even know, I don't think, that she needed spiritual water. But she come to the well and found out she did. And when she left the well, she was wanting more of it. But it's just, you get, again, you can be full of it, but you want more. And that's what amazes me with the Bible. I could try to take the time and sit down and read for an hour or two, and my eyes get blurry, and my glasses start hurting my nose, and but I feel like I've filled up with it. But then I'll take my glasses off, rub my nose, and stretch my eyes a little bit, and I say, let me read another chapter. I'm full, but I want more. And some days I feel like I'm satisfied. A lot of times with the message that we get here, and but then I get home and I say, I want to look up, I want to read, a little further through that. The rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say. I want to get it all, and I kind of like that. I get satisfied, but then I find myself being satisfied with what I got, but I feel like the Lord can add to it. And but I think we're all supposed to be hungry for the Lord. And the Lord instilled that in us when we're born. It's another one of the things I read on there, that nobody tells a baby to be hungry when it's born. That baby's hungry when it's born. It knows how to eat. It knows, it knows it needs to eat when it's born. And it's the same way with a new Christian. When you're born again, you know that you need to get the spiritual food. You can't. And we, as, I don't want to say mature, but maybe more mature Christians than a new believer, should be there to help them, to feed them the right spiritual word, and to guide them through and be a witness and a help to them. Because everybody gets hungry. Everybody needs to eat. And people that can help with that need to help with that. I didn't get to find in the Bible. I know we should should help the hungry. Like I say, I had limited access to my resources this weekend, but I know there's, feeding the hungry and help them with that. And we need to feed the spiritually hungry as well as the physically hungry. And let me go in back on Psalm 42:1. As the hart panteth after the water brooks, my soul panteth for you, O Lord. I may have paraphrased that just a little bit because I can't find it that quick. But let me read it now, get it right. As the hart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. I believe that's where we need to be. That we, that as Charles Stanley was talking about that, he said, just imagine that deer maybe being chased by something, and it's run through the woods for who knows how long, how many miles, and it finds a water brook, and it lays down there and gets it a drink, and it's just breathing hard and panting and sweating, and just the relief of getting that drink of water and a little bit of rest there, that we can yearn for the Lord that way and come to Him and be protected and fed and given drink from Him. And that is where I've got to.